I've never seen anything this beautiful in the entire galaxy.
Hey guys, hello gorgeous. A couple of months ago I had some vacation time, so I used it to make my most epic colossal video ever for my custom G.I. Joe Ultimate USS Flag. Up until that point, I had been doing all of my video reviews in front of a blank background, and the problem with the colossal, huge, ginormous custom flag with the extra lower deck on it was that I couldn't get it out of the room I was keeping it in. And so I figured rather than taking it apart, because every time I take it apart to move it to a different room, something breaks or snaps, and you flag owners know what that feels like. I figured I'll just shoot the review in the room it's in, and hopefully the background isn't too busy or distracting. And much to my surprise, the room that the flag is in got, I think, almost as much positive feedback as the flag itself. I've gotten so many requests from people wanting to get a better look at my 80s toy museum. So I've got some more vacation time right now, and I'm going to take you through a walkthrough through the Michael Mercy 80s Toy Museum right this way. I grew up in the 80s in a mid-sized town in Ontario, Canada called Kitchener. Some kids dreamed of going to Disneyland. I dreamed of going to Toronto, because that's where Toys R Us was. In the mid-80s, my dream came a little closer to home when a Toys R Us was built in Kitchener. It didn't matter to me that my family couldn't afford most of the toys within. I just wanted to go there, be surrounded by colorful plastic representations of courage, heroism, charisma, and fun. Just as their theme song said, I was hooked. I was a Toys R Us kid. Whenever those doors would slide open, I felt the same rush of excitement come over me that other kids would get whenever they entered a theme park. Who would I see today? Perhaps a real American hero who lets his sword and wolf do the talking for him? Or the last of the Jedi, clad in black and brandishing his new green-bladed lightsaber? Or a quartet of wisecracking geologists fighting monsters from the Earth's core? Maybe if I had a problem, and if no one else could help, I could find some Vietnam vets to make a plan come together. Sometimes I hoped I'd find 1,000 lawmen. Sometimes I'd find one. He was enough. And some days illusion was the mighty power that could save the day. You see, unlike most kids who throw a temper tantrum when their mom or dad wouldn't buy them the toy that looked so cool hanging from the peg or in a box on a shelf, I understood the concept of finances even at that young age. My mom and dad worked hard, damn hard, to put food on the table and pay the bills. So I found other ways to keep myself entertained. While most kids needed to tear open the package and hold the toy in their hand, I was content to just look and imagine. And I think that's what cultivated my creativity. As a kid, I had hundreds of hours of playtime at Toys R Us without ever opening a single card or box. As the years went by and money wasn't quite as scarce, I started to build my own personal collection and again, unlike most kids, didn't need to be too hands-on with my toys thanks to my imagination. You might be wondering, how? How does something like this come to be? Well, as with all amazing things, it takes time. This is about 35 years of patience, perseverance, and care. But most of all, fun! I don't know if you've been to a Toys R Us recently, but for me, the magic isn't quite what it used to be. And I think it has a lot to do with the characters currently populating the aisles there. Times have changed. The age of heroism is over, or at least in hibernation. It's the age of the cynical, sarcastic anti-hero now, the dark hero. Whatever floats your boat, but I prefer color. And so years ago, when walking into a Toys R Us stopped giving me goosebumps, I set out to create a Toys R Me. The dream once again moved closer, this time right into my home. Some of them might not have been my favorite toy line from the 80s, but they represent a part of a bygone age of colorful and, yes, sometimes to the point of being cheesy, heroes. But I dare say one of the most special pieces in my toy museum is something I didn't even buy. It's this sign, a birthday present from my amazing wife. You see, as passionate as I am about all things 80s, this collection wouldn't exist if it wasn't for her. She not only tolerated it, she encouraged it. That is what true love is. Not just putting up with your spouse's hobbies, but empathizing, getting joy from their joy. And so this sign proudly hangs atop my mint-on-card wall as the cherry on top of my magnum opus of plastic paradise. The room may be smaller than a full-size Toys R Us, but the feeling is the same as I had 30 years ago every time I'd walk into the biggest toy store there was. Because it's not just about what's on the shelves and pegs, it's about who's there. So let me introduce you to my heroes, and some of the characters that made them heroic. Let's start with the southeast corner. While most of my collection is taken up by the big three of the 80s boys' toy lines, Masters of the Universe, G.I. Joe, and Transformers, I made sure to make room for one of the 80s coolest, less successful toy lines. Kenner's Centurions. Man and Machine. Power. Extreme. Max Ray. Brilliant Sea Operations Commander. Power. Extreme. Ace McCloud, daring air operations expert. And Jake Rockwell, rugged land operations specialist. Centurions were a combination of Mego dolls and Lego. They were much bigger than the average action figures at the time, towering over G.I. Joes and Masters of the Universe, almost as tall as the vintage 12-inch G.I. Joes, and each figure had different weapon systems that could be attached with varying degrees of firepower. In addition to all the loose figures, I was lucky enough to hunt down some mint-in-box figures years ago on eBay, before these fellas skyrocketed in value. Even though the weapon systems weren't sentient, they had cool code names. The standard figures included small-sized systems, Jake's Fire Force, Ace's Sky Knight, and Max's Cruiser. Then there were mid-sized weapon systems sold separately from the figures. Wild Weasel, Orbital Interceptor, and the incredibly rare Sea-Bat, released in small numbers right around the time the toy line was cancelled. Power Extreme! Jake got a chance to catch some air with Hornet. Max packed some serious firepower with Tidal Blast. And since Ace had fewer weapon systems than his pals, I created this custom weapon system using parts from existing ones. What would be a good name for this one? Maybe Top Gun. Also released in small numbers right before the cancellation was Jake's Swing Shot, Ace's colossal one-man armada, Skybolt, and another customized system for Max, a beefed-up Tidal Blast, Jake's large-sized system Detonator, a combined Skybolt and Orbital Interceptor for when Ace needed to blow stuff up in space real good, featuring a customized helmet like the one on the show with a yellow-tinted see-through visor, and Max's large-sized weapon system, Depth Charger. And the final Centurions shelf features the villains, Doc Terror and Doc with the Doomstrafer equipped, the ridiculously rare Traumatizer, and Hacker, with and without Doomstrafer upgrade. Since I haven't been able to find boxed Terror and Hacker figures for the right price, I've filled up the back of this last shelf with Centurion head coin banks. Coins are what we used to use before debit, kids. The bottom of this corner shelf has a few lines that have the least sentimental value, but like I said, we're part of the 80s and the sum is greater than the parts in this toy museum. Just as they did in the aisles of the 80s, I like having a few pieces from these less successful lines as garnish for the other powerhouse lines. First is one of the most inappropriate franchises to adapt to a kid's toy line and cartoon. RoboCop and the Ultra Police by Kenner.
Put down your weapons. You are under arrest.
Although the movie was rated R for brutal, gory violence, somebody thought RoboCop would make a great hero for kids. And they were right. Here's Robo 1, RoboCop's police cruiser, along with a RoboCop figure from a later toy line that was based on the live-action show filmed in Toronto. There were some wild gimmicks as part of this toy line as well, including Night Fighter RoboCop, who glowed in the dark and had a big cannon on his arm.
The situation is now under control.
Next is Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future by Mattel.
Power on. Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future.
If you've never heard of Captain Power, it's basically Terminator. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic future and the world has been destroyed by evil robots. The show was live action and starred Tim Dunnigan as Captain Power, who was, interestingly enough, the original Faceman on the A-Team pilot before Dirk Benedict took over. And several episodes were written by J. Michael Straczynski, the creator of Babylon 5. The show was surprisingly dark for a kids' show, and the series finale ends with the death of one of the main characters. You'd think it would be one of the rough, tough guys going out in a blaze of glory, but it was actually the girl, Jennifer Pilot Chase, which made it even more bewildering and depressing. The toy line was revolutionary in that the toys interacted with the show. You could blast bad guys in the show in their flickering target areas.
Fire invisible beams at the television targets and score!
Or they could blast you, causing cool gimmicks to trigger, like ejecting out of the power jet.
Warning! The TV will fire back! It will fire back! Score or be hit!
The figures featured chrome paint jobs, which is always a plus in my books. But the figures themselves haven't aged as well as G.I. Joe's. Literally. The guns regularly fall apart from barely handling them, and the sculpts weren't that great to begin with. A curious oddity with some cool ideas behind it, but the execution unfortunately failed to live up to the creativity. And finally, tucked away in the back corner are some Wheeled Warriors, also by Mattel.
Wheeled warriors explode into battle. Lightning strikes.
Here we have the hero's main vehicle, Armed Force, and the leader of the villains, Saw Boss. The show had a pretty long run for a toy line that wasn't that successful, 65 episodes, and several episodes were also written by J. Michael Straczynski. They never made a Jace figure, but I used an existing Lightning League figure to customize one. Not too tough, just add a skunk stripe. Like Captain Power, these toys featured nice chrome paint applications. And like Captain Power, I didn't have any as a kid, and I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the toy line, but it's from the same era as the other great toy lines, so it completes the look. And the show's theme song is one of my all-time favorites, animated or live action. It's right up there with the theme song to m.a.s.k. and Hardcastle and McCormick. So that's part 1 of my 80s Toy Museum tour. Tune in next time for more classic cartoon and TV show figures, vehicles, and playsets. Share if you like the video, leave an extreme comment below, and to join the retro tribe, hit subscribe. Nerd m.a.s.k!